Welcome to Modern Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping you feel better about your finances. I'm your host, Jim Grace, and I'll be your guide as we discuss the psychology of money and explore the emotional aspects that shape our financial decisions and how we feel about them. A quick note before we start, although I do hope that you find the information on this show to be helpful, in no way are any of these discussions to be taken as specific financial advice. Please do your own research and talk to your own advisors, especially when making important financial decisions. All right, everybody, welcome to Modern Financial Wellness. My guest today is Gordan Stein, author of Cashflow Cookbook. I've got it here. $2 million of financial freedom in 60 easy recipes. Gordan, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
A real pleasure to be here, Jim. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I was excited to talk to you for a couple reasons. I first heard of the book from a prior guest. So one of the things I like to do is ask the guests that come and talk with me to just recommend what they're reading, what was impactful, podcasts they're listening to. And I don't know if you know the name, Erica Wasserman.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know
so
Erica.
Erica was a guest on the podcast, and one of the books that she recommended was Cashflow Cookbook. So I picked it up. I think probably started following along on LinkedIn and saw some of your content there. Picked up the book, really loved it. So it's a cool experience when this happens, when it comes full circle and I get to talk to an author like yourself. So thanks again for being here.
No, it's great. Good.
As we dig in, from my understanding, you were not in personal finance when this project originated. Would you mind just sharing with us a little bit about your background and help us kind of transition into where the book came into existence?
Yeah, sure. I've never worked in the financial industry. I was in the high-tech world, executive in sales, marketing, and operations, companies like Dell and Apple. So I often had a large crew of people on my team. I guess I peaked at about 350 people at one point. And they're often young people, and they're often struggling with their finances, and they're often saying, hey, how do you get ahead? How do you make money? How do you become rich? You know, it's just, they're very, very interested in that. And most of them are living paycheck to paycheck, and they're struggling, and they've got credit card bills. And so that was kind of always in my head. And then the book came about when I found a way to get car washes for free, which sounds silly. And so it was really just through a gas retailer, loyalty points. And they had an easier way to pay for gas. I thought this is kind of cool. So it was saving me $25 a month. Not that anyone's getting excited about that. But I was fascinated because it took no effort whatsoever. And now I had another $25. And so I committed that to growing my retirement wealth. Again, not that it's a big deal. But not long after that, I heard an ad for discounted home security systems. So your existing system, but paying less for the monthly monitoring. And that saved another $25 a month. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? So now I'm up $50, but I gave up nothing. Became a bit of an obsession. I had a list of these ideas, then I put it in a spreadsheet and I future valued all of these savings, and the results were incredible. And the criteria was things that take no more effort, give up nothing, and saved at least $25 a month. And the list grew to $13,000 of monthly savings idea. And my accountant said, hey, this would make a great book. And that's how the whole thing got started. And now I've been speaking and writing for 8 years.
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I think you definitely keyed on a really important aspect of personal finance or financial planning, however you want to describe it, because as a financial planner myself, clients come to me with similar questions to these young professionals that were on your team. You know, how do I get ahead? How do I retire early? How do I get my financial house in order? They have financial goals that they want to accomplish. And often for everybody, it really starts with an understanding of cash flow. And, you know, to impact your financial future, there's really only two things you could do, which is to make more money or to spend less. Those are the big things that you can control. But I feel like a lot of people get stuck in the spend less, right? For a lot of different reasons. So what I loved about the book is it's a really practical approach and guide to just get people on that journey to exploring where they can spend a little bit less money and transition those dollars into saving and investing and growing their wealth over time. So can you just walk us through how you set this up? Because you did it in a really fun way. It's a cookbook, quote unquote. So tell us about the format a little bit and why food?
Okay, yeah, great question. So when my accountant said this will make a great book, and I thought, okay, this will be a novel, and I had my characters and I had the plot line, and I booked myself off a week at the cottage to just focus, and I was going to get a big start on this book. And after a few hours, I realized it just wasn't going to work. There was just too many numbers and too many ideas, and it just couldn't fit into a novel. And I was really discouraged, and I was all set to give up. And then the next day, kind of under my breath, I said, it's more like a cookbook. And I went, oh my goodness, it is a cookbook because these ideas are like recipes. And, you may already be doing some of the recipes or you don't feel like chicken that day. So you're not looking at the chicken recipes. I'm using the analogy there. So I broke it into 6 sections. So it's housing, transportation, food, household, lifestyle, and financial, which are
And real
big.
quick on
Yeah.
that, is it because those are the big ones? How did you think about that when you broke it down in that way?
They're in order of typically our largest expense is housing, followed by transportation and so on. And it just really organized the 10 best in each of those 6 categories. That was kind of the concept. So the food part is number one, it was just a great fit. And the second part is it's kind of a tribute, I guess, to my mother, who was a big writer, author, and speaker. And her focus was on food. She was fascinated with different foods around the world and how that shaped people's culture. So it's a bit of a nod to her up in the heavens. So anyway, the book came together and I started thinking about these ideas of these recipes. And the original edition was kind of just the recipes. And then more recently, it's now in its 8th printing, I changed it where the opening 45 pages are a story. And we look over the shoulder of this couple, 35-year-old couple, Eric and
Yeah.
Keisha, and they make all these financial discoveries, freeing up more and more cash flow.
Yeah.
And when the test readers read it, they said, but that's so easy. And I said, yes. And then the next part, that gets you fired up. They free up $1,800. They work with their wealth advisor who helps them parlay that into an extra $1.5 million at retirement.
Right.
And then the
Right.
recipes give us the detail of exactly how to do those things.
Yeah, I like the way that you did that because I think people are victims of social comparison. So they'll look around and they'll see the social media profiles and all the toys and the vacations and everything. And people don't really realize what's going on behind the scenes, right? So
Yes.
what looks really good online sometimes doesn't align with reality as a point number one. But then again, people don't have good examples of how do I make change in my own household, right? So I love the story that you laid out because it is a really relatable experience of a couple trying to get their house in order and find ways to save money. And you start to give some real world practical examples of where you can start. So if these are housing, transportation, et cetera, these are kind of our big spending categories. It seems like you also break them down by minimal effort, low return, and then maybe things that you have to tackle that are going to take a little bit of time, but there's a bigger impact, like negotiating your real estate taxes as an example that I came across in the book. So do you have any thoughts on where people should start with some of this?
It's a great question. I mean, you can literally start anywhere, So I moved 5 years ago. I moved from Canada to the US and we bought this 1938 home. And, the utility bills were significant. It's a 1938 home. And so in that case, where I got started in this house, I was in my workroom, which has a door that goes out to the garage. I always thought the workroom was a bit chilly. And I looked underneath the door. There's about a 3/4 of an inch gap underneath that door with the winter wind, whistling into the house. So, $10 later from Home Depot, proper threshold door sweep, the room was warmer. So I started finding all of these air infiltration spots around the house. House actually has 5 exterior doors, and none of them were properly sealed. So some quick handiwork there, a number of other changes, saved $100, chopped my electricity bill in half, and took out 25% of my gas bill. So paying my electricity and gas bill isn't fun. I don't get any fun or enjoyment from electricity bills and gas bills. But if I free up that money, I can work with a wealth advisor and grow that money even more. Or I can buy really great things that I enjoy, like too many Guitars.
Guitars. Yeah. Yeah. I'm noticing that. Yeah. And that's what's again really cool. I got through this book pretty quickly and realized about halfway through is you could really pick it up and start wherever you want. It's a good, kind of coffee table read to just have around when you're having the conversation with yourself or your partner about saving money, and just flip through and see if anything resonates with you.
Yeah, you can start. That's the beauty of it. It is like a recipe book. You don't have to read it like a novel. It's not an onerous thing. You read the opening story, 45 pages, and you say, wow, what everyone's going to say, hey, how can I change my finances around to stop worrying about money? Make that part easy. And then you just go pick up, you find a recipe that grabs you, you go implement the idea, and you enjoy the benefits.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of your favorites, or do you get feedback from the readers or the wealth advisors that you work with? Do you have a top 3 or 5 that come to mind that really resonate with a lot of people?
Well, one of the best ones, and I think it's a great example of this minimal effort, minimal sacrifice, no budgeting thing. And I missed it for the first 6 editions of the book, and I'm kind of embarrassed by that, but it's certainly in the current editions. And that was credit score, because you hear people talking credit score all the time. It just sounds boring, and it is boring. But what blew me away as I started to learn about credit scores is that your credit score can swing the cost of your car insurance by 30 to 50%. It can swing the cost of your home insurance by 30 to 50%, and it can swing your loan and mortgage interest over the course of the loan or mortgage by 3, 4, or 5 fold. So that's a really big deal. And fixing your credit score doesn't cost anything. You don't have to give up anything whatsoever. Here's the icing on the cake, though, is that 80% of our credit reports include errors. So many of us are paying too much across all of these categories because we have errors on our credit reports. And the credit agencies, they're not compensated on the accuracy of the reports. They're just compensated on the fact they have the reports. So a great place for people to start, go online, check out your credit score, take a look at your credit report, and then work with them to get the errors fixed, and then start to learn about how to improve your credit score. Maybe you're at 650 and you want to get it to 750. Well, that makes nobody cares about that number, but that makes a big difference in all these costs. So that was one that really caught me right off
Yeah,
the bat. It's an
it's
easy
an
one.
interesting example too, because that's one when people think about spending less money, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about cutting the Netflix subscription that they don't watch or the gym membership that they don't use, right? The easy low hanging fruit, so to speak. But credit score, if I were to ask 10 people where they can save money, I doubt that any of them would list their credit score as an option. So that's a
Right. And
great
that's where,
example. Yeah.
all these personal finance books, give up your lattes. Don't give up your lattes. If you enjoy your latte, have your latte. It's just not and maybe we'll get to that later on, but it's
Well,
not the place to start. Let's go
yeah,
attack our gas bill, our cell phone bill,
right, right.
our credit score. Let's go after, all of these different kinds of insurance. Every single bill that people have, all of them can be lowered. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's no heavy negotiating. It's all frankly easy, and most of it you do behind your keyboard.
Right, right. I'm laughing as you bring up the latte because I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with that example. Earlier in my career, I was anti-latte, and you should be saving the $5 or $6 and putting that towards your financial future, paying off debt. But then I've kind of swung the pendulum, has gone in the other direction where if you enjoy the latte and that gets you out of the house and that's an experience that brings you some joy, then enjoy your latte, right? I think you're helping me clarify in real time that if you are going to enjoy the latte, make sure you're looking at other places within your spending where you can save some money so it frees up the $6 and you don't have to worry about it, right? It's kind of a balancing act between
Yeah,
those two
it
things.
is. And I think I bounced back and forth a little bit on this one as well. So I actually think you should look at all that, but I don't think that's the place to start. So, for example, I chopped my electricity bill in half. What did I give up? Nothing, but it freed up $100 a month. What do I do with that? I invest it. So now I'm focusing on changing my savings rate. Now it's a little different for me given my mature years. But if you're a young person, you make these changes, you increase your savings rate, you work with your wealth advisor, and you grow that capital that'll look after you for the rest of your life so you don't worry about money. So once you change the mindset and you start to say, holy cow, I freed up $100 or $200 a month on my electricity bill or whatever these car insurance, home insurance, cell phone bills, all these things, they all can get lowered easily. So once you free up that money, you increase your savings rate, you start to watch your wealth grow. And I think that literally rewires your mind because now you're going to say to yourself, wow, I did that on all the fixed monthly bills, all the things we've been talking about. And it makes people say, hey, what's happening over here? So now when you go to a restaurant, hey, go out and have a great meal. But when the waiter says, can I get you a bottle of sparkling water?
Mm,
Okay. So in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I want some water. But then I'm thinking to myself, hang on, a bottle of sparkling water, is that a $16 bottle of sparkling water plus the tax and the tip? Would I have an inferior dinner if I just said, give me tap water?
right.
It's
Right.
the same darn dinner.
Yeah,
You start to think about those other things.
yeah, you bring up a couple of great points here. Number one is mindset, right? So to me, it really takes some effort in thinking about changing your mindset from I don't have any control, I'm in debt, I'm not saving enough, to I do have some control over this and I need to free up some space and make an investment in my own self to kind of look at these things. And I think the numbers that you lay out in the book should be helpful to a lot of people, that if we can save some money and transfer that to saving and investment, compounded rate of return over time, when you look at that in your own situation, it adds up to big numbers over a longer period of time. So that should be helpful to kind of get people in that right frame of mind to take some action here. But I guess I'm hearing you say that where you would suggest people start is these fixed bills, these things that we have to pay. We don't have to give anything up to change them, but it can make a big impact. So starting with those fixed expenses and then looking at what you might describe as discretionary expenditures, all the lifestyle stuff kind of second, and where you have to make some sacrifices or give some things up, or again, maybe you have a different way of thinking about that mindset wise. But is that how I'm hearing you go
Yeah.
about
But
it?
then when you get to that sort of discretionary or fun or whatever you want to call it, again, you don't have to give anything up. So I'll give you a perfect example. Right beside my head is a black and white American Standard Fender Telecaster guitar. And those are about $2,500 plus tax to get one out of the store. So I paid $1,000 for it. I didn't yell at anybody. I didn't negotiate. I didn't do anything. I went to one of the online buying sites. Um, and some of them can specify, hey, I want this model of this thing with this year and these features, and it'll email you when it finds one. So that's exactly, I wanted a maple necked black American Standard Telecaster within this year range. And then I got a note that said, yeah, here it is, condition excellent, etc., $1,000 instead of $2,500 plus tax. So now I've got precisely the guitar I want. This thing is mint. It's brand new. It looks like brand new. It is, plays great. But I've got $1,500 that I can give to my wealth advisor. I can invest it into my future, let that thing grow. So if I did that when I was 25 or 30 years old, by the time I get to my 60s, that thing's now grown to $15,000, those savings. I've had a
Yeah,
beautiful guitar the whole way through. So it's just
right.
a smarter way of thinking about
Yeah.
things.
That reminds me, I just pulled up the book. This makes me think of a section that I wanted to make sure I highlighted for people, which is in the discretionary spending when you kind of get into that in the beginning of the book. And it's the client example telling a story about looking at their expenses. And the quote is, it's interesting as we look at all these day-to-day expenses, it seems to me that this is about being more mindful, taking a minute to look at each item and category before buying. Right. So pausing and being mindful before you buy something, taking a minute to look at each item and category before buying. In my mind, I now have a checklist before pulling out my checkbook. And then it lists these questions to kind of go through. And this is, again, something I wanted to spotlight for folks. These questions are, do we need it? Can we borrow it? Can we rent it? Can we get a used one? Can we shop for a better price? Is there a better way to buy this type of thing? Is there a way to get it at a discount? Can we substitute with something else? And I thought that was such a great example of that checklist or that process of pausing before you just click mindlessly and buy something, because there's all these different ways that maybe you could pay a little bit less and have the exact same experience that you otherwise would have had.
That's it exactly. I'll give you a real quick example. So my blood cholesterol was a little high. My doctor prescribed a statin pill. Went to Walgreens or, CVS, wherever it was, and the monthly prescription was $107 a month. Now, that's a pretty material amount of money. I can afford the $107 a month, but it's not $5 a month. It's 107. So I said to the pharmacist, that's a little pricey, and she said, well, why don't you join our drug card plan? So you buy the card for $20 a year, and the pills go from 107 to 63.
And if you hadn't asked that
Right.
question, or it wasn't even a question, it was a statement
It
that
was
that's pricey, right?
right.
And they weren't going to tell you that ahead of time. All you had to do was just say, "Hey, that's expensive," and here appeared a
Right.
way of
So
saving.
it's this mindset. I just said, gosh, that's kind of a lot.
Right.
Tells them about the drug card. That saves $500 a month for just making that little statement. Then I was telling this story to my brother-in-law because I was quite pleased with myself saving $500 a year on these pills. And he said, no, no, no. He says, you want to get them through GoodRx, which is an online site, and they send you coupons, and then you go get your pills. So I rushed home after our dinner, looked it up, and the pills are now $13.88 a month. 107, 63, 13. I thought, well, geez, maybe we're not done here. So I did a little more Googling. I
Yeah.
find this company called Blink Health. Well, they ship the pills to my house for $7 a month, postage in. I don't even get out of my chair, and my pills come right to my house. Then,
Wow.
strangely, they lowered it to $6 a month. Not that I was complaining. So, think about the money here. I felt like going back to Walgreens, grabbing everybody who's in line, give them a copy of my book, and say, "Listen, people, you're going to waste yourself 100 or more a month." I then worked with my doctor with some diet and exercise changes. I don't take the pills anymore. So 107 to 0. There's always a better way.
Yeah, yeah. I loved in the healthcare section that it starts out by saying, take care of yourself, right? Live a healthy lifestyle, eat good food, get some sleep. I mean, all of us, I think, underestimate what our healthcare costs are going to be in our lifetime, especially as we start to get older. So, again, it's, we're talking about money and saving and not spending more than we have to, but just taking care of yourself makes a huge impact over a longer period of time, doesn't it?
It's massive. And,
Yeah.
if you don't have your health, you don't have anything at all. So if you're not taking care of yourself and, you put in some extra weight, you're not getting an exercise, you're not eating healthy, and all these things sound boring and they sound naggy and virtue signaling, whatever you want to call it. But you know what? Your body remembers everything you eat and every bit of exercise you didn't get, the fresh air you missed and the sleep you
Right.
missed, all these things. So you do them all right. It's a little bit effortful. It's a bit more mindful,
Right.
but you reap these terrific benefits.
Yeah. Along the lines of prescription drugs, there was another example about devices, I think, in the book, if I recall correctly. So I sprained my ankle recently and I was ignoring it for a while, thought it would get better. And then I went to kind of a walk in place to check it out, and it was fine, but they suggested that I be in a walking boot. And they had one there. And I don't know what it would have cost me, but I looked at the same exact model and I could buy it on Amazon for a really reasonable amount of money. So I walked out, no pun intended, of that and just bought the walking boot myself. I don't have a comparison to what it would have cost me because I didn't take the one they were going to hand me, but I'd imagine it's full price marked up through the healthcare system. And it just got me thinking, how many times have I had crutches or had an injury, and you get these different devices that are supplied to you by your healthcare provider. And next thing you know, you get copays or you're paying out of pocket for some of these things. And you don't even stop to think because you just want to get better, right? So it's just another great example of pausing and being mindful that there might be a better way.
Yeah, the whole healthcare thing is massive. So I actually looked at that example of, they call it DME, durable medical equipment. The fracture boots, typical cost from a healthcare provider is about $1,500 for those plastic boots that you wear. Amazon, they're about 50.
Right. I think I
So
paid like
it's a great example.
$40 or $60, somewhere in that, right in that range. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you look at medical bills in general, 80% of them have errors. So if you want to have an example, all medical procedures have a 5-digit code. So it's fixing your dislocated shoulder, it's a colonoscopy, it's a, whatever it is, MRI. If you go onto a site called turquoise.health, you can type in your procedure that you need done, and your zip code. It'll give you every provider. It gives you reviews on the doctors, and it gives you the price, the cash price and the in-network price. And the difference, the swing on a cash price can typically be about fivefold. So you can spend $5,000 on the MRI you need, or you can spend 1,000. And whether
Yeah.
your healthcare covers it or it doesn't, there's still the co-pays and everything else to look at. So there's a lot that you can look at in the health category
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. My mother actually needed pretty significant dental work done. And she went by referral from her dentist to a specialist to check that out and was quoted $50,000 for this procedure, which is to say that that would be impactful to my retired parents' financial situation is an understatement. And she looked around and there was a specialist that ended up doing it for 10 or 15, I think. So the difference between 50 or 10 or 15 for the same exact procedure was startling to me. And it was timely because I was preparing for this conversation. This is another example. It just happened. So
Yes, and
it's
some
wild.
things, I wouldn't recommend this in the world of dental things, Jim. But lots of things around your house you can do it yourself. You can, if you don't have the skills. My goodness, you go on YouTube. There's so many videos that'll give you exactly the make and model of car you want to fix, or exactly the project you want to do around your home. You build your skills, you build your confidence, you do more and more on your own. It's fun. You have the sense of self sufficiency, and it's a lot of money you can save.
Yeah. It brings up a question. I'm hoping to help people that would have a response. And I'm in this camp as well, right? You see this endless list of things that you can do to save money, some with minimal effort, some with more, but all of them do take an investment of time, right? So you have to make a commitment to show up and try to tackle some of these things. And I guess what can we say to some people that, like myself, I have two little kids. I'm running a business. My wife works, and we're just up to our eyeballs in life, right? And it's like, that's all great, but I don't have a lot of time. Are there any motivational words of wisdom, or how do we get people fired up to at least start the journey?
Well, let's look at this. Here's how I look at that one. The average American watches 20 hours of television a week. So if you took 1 week off television, you could read Cashflow Cookbook cover to cover. You could implement probably half of the relevant recipes. You could free up, I would say, $800,000 a month easily. Now, if you want to take the second week, you could probably implement the other half of the relevant recipes. The whole time thing. When I was at that stage of young kids, I ran 3 marathons. You can do whatever you want to do. If you take any figure, Warren Buffett, he only gets the same number of hours a week that we do. Helen Keller had the same number of hours a week that we do. You know, there's always a way to do it. You actually can make it work. Most of us have so much wasted time in a day, whether we're playing on Facebook or just screen time, most of which is not about learning or personal
Right.
betterment or whatever. We all have the time, and even when you do something, in one of my talks on retirement, I give the example of I ran the New York City Marathon in 1992. That's a huge time commitment. I felt like a big hero getting out there. But near the end of the marathon, I saw these people and they were holding hands running. And I thought, what are they doing? They're holding hands. And they had these jackets on that said Achilles Track Club. And then when I got near them, I realized, oh my goodness, they're blind.
Oh, wow.
So I thought I was a big hero, training and running a marathon as a non-runner, a big story. Nothing
Right.
doing. These
Yeah.
blind people were out there running marathons. So if you want to do something, you want to change your health or your diet or your exercise or your personal finances, but we all have the time.
Right.
Whether you have 2 or 3 little kids running, I had 3 kids, you can do what you want to do. You just don't waste time
Right.
with televisions
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me, I interviewed recently Dr. Brad Klontz and Adrian Brambilla. They just wrote a book called Start Thinking Rich, and it was about mindset. And they have a chapter in the book, and I'm paraphrasing and we'll butcher it, but it was cut your own hair, get on the bus, stop watching Netflix, or quit complaining about being broke, right? It's like, there are things that you can do to change your financial situation. In this case, to lower your expenses, spend less money. If you prioritize it and commit the time, it's all within your control to kind of take that step forward and get some of these things done. So,
in 15 minutes, you can go online and compare your house insurance prices. And you'll typically see a swing House insurance, car insurance, you'll see a good swing of $200. I can pretty much guarantee it. That's a 15-minute job. You can do it, while you've got a glass of wine and you're sitting in front of your computer. Everybody's got that time, and you'll get
Yeah.
hooked.
Yeah. How do you track your expenses if you track your expenses? So, not to ask you too much of a personal question, but are there good apps, websites, tools that people are using to get visibility about how they're currently spending money that you'd recommend?
You can do all of that. There's lots of them. I think that's the hard way to do it. Here's the
You think
easy
so?
way to do it. You set up two checking accounts. One pays all those regular recurring monthly bills. So the car insurance, house insurance, all the utility bills, the cell phone, the internet, all that stuff, all your apps, anything that happens every month that should be an automatic payment, get it set up on automatic payment, paperless. And then you put all those in a folder on your browser so you can find all of them and check them when you want to. Then you start with those. You go through each and every one of those things and you lower it. You can just do one a week. So everybody has the time to look at one bill and you take a peek at all those things. You lower all of those. And everything that you save, you put to your biggest financial priority. So if you're swimming in 25% interest credit card debt, that's where you start. If you're not, then you want to work with your wealth advisor and start increasing that monthly contribution for your Roth IRA or 401k, whatever it is. So we're going to grind down that bill payment account. We're going to take every dollar of that and we're going to use it to increase our growing wealth. That's step one. Then step two, you go after your everything else account. I'll call it your discretionary, but that's groceries, dining out, clothing, all of that stuff. And you're just going to change your mindset. You're going to think about what I told you with that Telecaster guitar beside my head, and you're going to think that way about everything you're going to buy. You go to the grocery store, in my case, here in Ohio, I just joined their loyalty program. It costs nothing. I scan my little barcode each time I come. At the end of my bill, it shows me my my last 12 months of savings, $1,500.
Hmm.
It's just that easy. I don't do
Just
anything.
keeping a barcode on your key fob,
Right.
right?
So
Yeah.
then all my bills are paid. So now my wife and I, we're just managing this discretionary balance. So if someone needs a winter coat, you're going to say, hey, I need a winter coat. Then we're going to back off something else a little bit. And if you get to the end of the month, you're running low on money, you start eating what's in the cupboard.
Yeah. That's a
But
great
all your
example.
bills are going to get paid.
Yeah, I love it because a lot of people always ask me what tools I use, and apps and technology are great. And I think, as an add on to some of them, they allow us to do planning and longer term projections. But I love the practical approach of just getting all of your bills in one place and everything else in another, in this case, a checking account, and give you really practical visibility of what's happening so that you have that list of things to start with, right? You've got your own custom list right in your checking account of where to start. It's a great idea.
Right. Because people doing this whole budgeting exercise, and every month they're looking at their cell phone bill and their heating. What for? Why are you looking at those same numbers every month? Spend your time changing those numbers and get that money working for you. Then you have only a handful of numbers. I mean, what are you spending money on outside of those monthly recurring bills? It's pretty easy. It's kind of your groceries and it's a car repair, it's incidental things like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. So we've covered a lot. I think we jumped all over the place. Is there anything else that you'd want to share? Any ideas from the book or otherwise that might be helpful for people to hear before I let you go?
Yeah, I think, we talked a bit about financial wellness, and I think we've got to think about all the different kinds of wellness because they're all important. And we touched on a couple of them. We talked about health, but they all relate to one another. So you want to be making these same kinds of moves, these Cashflow Cookbook kinds of moves on your exercise. I use an Apple Watch and I'm looking at my rings and I close my rings all the time. So my fitness is on autopilot. And if I haven't been moving and I haven't been doing it, I get a little reminder on my wrist that says, hey, Gordon, get going. So you do the same things. I have, two or three breakfasts that I do, all of them healthy, two or three lunches, real quick and easy. You automate everything. Every now and again, you reorganize your space, your clothes, your closets, and that feels good. What are you doing on charity? Have I done something nice for my partner? Am I in touch with my family? Am I doing some constant learning to build my mind? And so you do all of these kinds of things. Am I doing something charitable to help others? You do all of those and you just get to this great place where you're enjoying life. Everything's on autopilot and it's easy and you have a fantastic life and you're helping other people.
Yeah, that's a great advice, and it kind of segues into some of the last questions I try to ask everybody. This being a show about financial well-being or well-being in general, what are some of the things that you think about? And I think I might know the answer here, but what are some of the other things besides Cashflow Cookbook and saving money that you go to feel better, have an improved sense of well-being overall? Is it fitness? It sounds like.
Well, fitness is the big one. I make sure I get my exercise. Music has been a big one. I was, kind of kicked out of the choir in junior school. It'd be good if you didn't sing, Gordon. So I lived all my whole life thinking, oh, I'm tone deaf. I don't have any music. And kind of picked up the guitar in earnest about 10 years ago, and just put a pile of work into it. Some great teachers and some great online stuff. And music is fantastic. It just opens up new pathways in your mind. It's so enjoyable. You get good enough that you can jam with someone else. You can have a Christmas concert in your house, do a big sing along or whatever it is you want to do. And so many things in life, people think I can't do it. And
Right.
you can. I was a non runner. I went and ran 3 marathons. It just takes a bit of a drive. And whatever it is you think you can't do, whether it's art or you're not coordinated, stop all this negative talk. Everybody
Yeah.
can do everything. Some have some better gifts to start, but the rest of us can play catch up and continue to grow our capabilities in every direction.
Yeah.
And people are missing a huge part of their life by thinking they're not this and they're not that.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It seems like you have a very much an open growth mindset, right? Which is what we might want to encourage everybody to not feel like they can't do anything that they can. The other interesting thing about music is when I talk to people about well-being, creativity and curiosity it seem to come up a lot as an adjacent part of somebody's life. They have something else that kind of scratches a creative itch, a curiosity itch. In your case, it's music, and it opens up all these other positive impacts on our lives when we have these things that we can get to and get ourselves out of a spreadsheet or a checking account for a little while and just kind of escape and work a different side of our brain. So that's great. Appreciate you sharing that. As we wrap up, the other question that I wanted to make sure I asked you, because again, this conversation came to be because I had a talk with Erica Wasserman, who recommended your book. Other books out there related to cash flow or otherwise, podcasts that you listen to that you think are good, websites that you visit that are talking about some of these things. Is there anything else out there in the universe that you'd want to spotlight for folks to check out if they're kicking off their cash flow journey?
I think we're talking about money ones. I just think read and listen. Go find ones that interest you. There's some great ones on dividend investing, which I think is a really powerful strategy. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think, does a really good job of some of his more recent stuff. I'm not sure I'm aligned with, but the
Yes.
book was really good. Get you thinking about, you don't take your money and spend your money. You take your money and you buy assets that spit off money forever. Rather, then you've got this ongoing, the tree keeps giving off fruit forever kind of thing, instead of just buying apples every time you need one. So that
Right.
was good. Gosh, there's just so many. I made a point of reading one personal finance book a month all through my 20s.
Oh, wow.
And, I borrowed them, I read them, I bought them, whatever it is. You pretty much can't go wrong if it's, something that's done well. The Wealthy Barber was a Canadian book that had some following in the US as well. His original one, I think, is a great book. The Richest Man in Babylon is well worth reading. It's really the one that The Wealthy Barber was based on. It's a old-time classic. And it really talks about the power of compounding. And you need to see that from multiple directions to make a difference. I think those are all good ones to do. And then I encourage people to do the same thing on all these other wellness areas that we looked at. There's a podcast called The Doctor's Pharmacy, spelled with an F, pharmacy, meaning real food. Fascinating. So that's, worth listening to. Huberman is another great one on
Yep.
the human body and how to get the most out of the one that the Lord gave you.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
there's just so many of them, and get a passion, if it's music or art, and then learn about that and keep improving.
Right,
And I
right. It
think
goes
you'll be
back to curiosity, right? Keep feeding that curiosity and exploring and learning and growing. And you never have to give that up, I guess. It's
intellectual curiosity. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. It's funny. Rich Dad, Poor Dad has come up on the show before, and everybody kind of couches, recent comments and thoughts from the author excluded. The book is really good.
Read the
Really
original
good.
book.
Read the original. Yeah, read the original. Yeah. So, Gordon, I really appreciate your time. This was really fun. I encourage everybody to pick up the book and just start thumbing through it. Give it a read and then go back, take a look at your bills and start taking some action because there's a lot of opportunity that you've laid out for us. So, again, appreciate your time. Where do people go to check out your work? Where do you want them to buy the book? Any socials, websites, anything you want to mention here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you get the book on Amazon. It's the easiest way to get it. You can get it in every country of the world. There's a US and a Canadian edition, depending on what country you're from. And there's going to be a Cashflow Cookbook course coming up as well, which a video course that runs through everything step by step, masterminds, all of that's in the works. I need to do a lot of work on my website as well. But cashflowcookbook.com, if you go there, if you subscribe to the blog on there, then you'll be in the loop when I get the course together and you can take advantage of that as well.
That's great. Any idea when that will be coming out? Do you have a timeline?
Going fast and furious. I'm going to try and get it done before the end of this year. But so many people said, hey, it'd be great. They can't see me speak somewhere because I'm speaking to clients of a wealth advisor. I'm in a city they're not in. But this would be a way to really follow. If you like the idea of the book and you really want to implement it, then it's going to be masterminds that'll go along with that. So just watch on cashflowcookbook.com and I'll let you know. You can follow me on social. I'm on LinkedIn. Look at me as my name, Gordan Stein, and the rest of them. The rest of the socials, look for Cashflow Cookbook.
Yeah, that's great. When the course comes out, make sure you let me know.
I will
definitely do what we can to put that out in front of as many people as we can. So, Gordan Stein, everybody, the book is Cashflow Cookbook. And again, Gordon, thanks so much for your time. And we'll hopefully see you again soon.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.